We're joined by mayoral candidate Larry Turner. He is a San Diego community officer, a community relations police officer, a Marine veteran, and a proud San Diegan from everything I've heard you say.
Right
how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing well. Thank you for joining us for this. I mentioned earlier our topics. We have about 3 general topics, about 5 minutes for each topic.
All right.
Want to keep it things that we know San Diegans are really focused on in this election. First off, San Diego is one of the most expensive cities to live in the country. Rent and housing prices are very high. What can you do as mayor to help bring those prices down, make it more affordable to rent a home, to buy a home in the city of San Diego?
Sure. I mean, part of it is preserving the affordable housing that we currently have. We have what a lot of people call NOAA, the naturally occurring affordable housing. And unfortunately, under this administration, we bulldoze over a lot of that for some new construction to come in and take its place. Beautiful buildings, you know, with market rate apartments in there, but we just got rid of affordable housing in doing so. And so some of the upzoning and some of the permits that are allowed for the outside developers to come in, you know, they see an opportunity there, a beautiful piece of property that's maybe an OB or somewhere else that, you know, the landlord who has it now has an older apartment complex or duplex that, you know, needs a little bit of upkeep on it. He has somebody coming in from out of town, a group of investors, for example, that will offer 120 or 130% of the market value for that apartment complex. And if they're making donations to the mayor, they know that they're going to get the approvals to be able to build something bigger there. We need to stop that, and we need to go and find those types of properties. Let the word get out that we're not going to be upzoning these. You're not going to be able to mow these down and destroy some of the affordable housing we have just to make some profit from, you know, take back your profits to another city. So any of these landlords who maybe are in some financial trouble, they can't necessarily fix the roofing or the plumbing type issues, and so they're looking at this as a way out. If they have that kind of financial difficulty in getting that the loan to do the upkeep on the place and bring it up to speed, you know, we don't want it to be a shabby, you know, kind of place. It's not necessarily where, you know, you or I would live, but some kids, young couples out of college, new couples coming, you know, out to San Diego, an affordable, good, solid place that's safe and healthy. We can help them do that upkeep on it to make sure that it is still out there. And there's some other measures too, but we knocked down so much affordable housing with the idea of, if we keep building, we're going to lower housing costs. And in reality, you know, we're filling our landfills with affordable homes that we're just destroying.
The state has mandates for how many units we have to build per year. We have a goal. How do we add more units to this?
Yeah, so one of the things that I brought up in a debate one time was that I want to have at least 10% of new construction be affordable housing. And the mayor quickly replied, well, that we already do have 10% as a rule. We do, but there's a comma after that in the rule. You can also pay a fee in lieu of that. And these outside investors come to San Diego. They find it much more profitable to pay us that fee in lieu, and then they don't build that affordable housing. So yeah, the mayor was correct on half of that rule, but the pay in lieu is what they're doing. They would rather make that 10% affordable housing and they just pay the city a fee. Now that fee is supposed to go toward affordable housing type measures and different policies we have, but it doesn't. And so at the end of the day, we have a rule there that we just don't follow. So we got to go 10% and more on every new construction.
For people that wouldn't fit into the affordable housing model, just young couples, young individuals who are trying to make a home in San Diego, how do you bring the price down for them? Yeah,
it all goes back to, there's 2 things mainly. One is on the rent of some of these homes. Whenever we have an outside investor, I think it's 25 or 28% of the homes are being purchased right now by investor groups. A lot of that's driving up the cost artificially of the homes. If we make it a market that is not really something that's desirable for that kind of an investor group to come in, and we're just keeping it earmarked just for the families that are wanting to buy it, not the investment groups. And there's ways we can do that. It keeps it down to a reasonable rate. I know someone personally, a couple that they qualify for about $1 million. They've gone in and asked or offered asking price on homes. Hey, $1 million, we're cleared for $1 million. Good jobs, good kids. And what happens is, you know, 120, 130% of asking prices being offered in cash offers by some of these outside investors. So that drives up the rate. Same thing with some of the folks that are buying up homes for short-term vacation rentals. That's a problem here in San Diego. We have far more than have been permitted. It's easy to see, actually. You can look at the city site where there's locations of homes that have the city's permit to do vacation rental. And then you can also go on Airbnb and look at the map on where they're at. And there's far more that are out there being offered. So a lot of people are taking advantage of short-term vacation rentals. And that's great to have some. But we need to get that back in check with some actual enforcement on that. When we do that, you know, it'll help the folks, the smaller number of people that are actually doing vacation rentals the right way. We'll just have them doing it. And then, kind of fill up some of the hotels again with the people that always did come to San Diego long before we had Airbnb and others. They were in the hotels. Bring some of that back into the hotels. I think that's going to help our economy.
We've got about 30 seconds, but I'm going to ask this quick follow-up. So how do we stop these institutional investors from coming in and buying residential properties?
Yeah, the biggest part is on what we're going to permit them to do with them. So, as I mentioned before with the additional ADUs that they're talking about, I've used some examples of ones where they've mowed down a house and then built a small 18 unit apartment complex in one of those spots. That takes a permit process. When they know that the mayor is not going to be allowing that anymore, except for in certain circumstances, I'm saying none, but the way it's been right now, it's a pay-to-play deal. If you put the right amount of donation into a campaign, it's going to be done. So if we can get rid of that method, that's kind of what we're known for here in San Diego, it'll stop those outside investors from being in here and raising the prices artificially.
All right, that's housing. That's some answers on that. Let's move on to our next big topic here. Sure. Also on the ballot is Measure E. That would add a penny to every dollar that is taxed in the city of San Diego. Every sale, retail sale, it's going to add a penny to the tax. They say it's going to generate about $400 million a year. What do you think about that? Do you support that measure? Why or why not?
Yeah, not at all. The mayor hasn't been responsible with the money he's been spending already. So he's got us in a deficit. This last, quote unquote, balanced budget isn't balanced. It doesn't follow. We have some really good finance principles that we're supposed to follow in San Diego, and we did up until about 4 years ago. And the biggest one is taking those one-time revenues and using them for ongoing expenditures, and that's what he's balanced the budget with. And that's just a recipe for disaster. It's going to be deficit spending. It's basically just like continually, maxing out credit cards and asking for more. So it's also reliant on this 1 cent sales tax passing. So, it's with the idea of it's a balanced if. It's not going to pass. People are against it. If you wanted it for infrastructure, like he says, well, then you would have earmarked it for infrastructure. I think we would believe you that it was for infrastructure if you would have done that. Could have done it. Easy to do. The other thing is putting a sunset clause on it. These are reasons why I just don't trust them. And past experience with them and the way that they're lining this up. There is no sunset clause on it. It's good forever. If they would have put like a 5-year limit on it, and then if we saw they did with it what they said they would, well, then we would vote for it again. They didn't do that. There's a reason, because they're not going to do with it what they said. I have learned that they've asked every department in the city to look at doing a 15% cut across the board in every division, every department in the city. So that tells you that they need, and that's if this doesn't pass, which it won't. So that tells you it's not just for the infrastructure, like they said. It is just to pay the salary increases. They've raised salary by $500 million a year since the mayor took over. So $500 million a year. This is, you said $400 million that they're estimating this to be revenues coming into the city. I'd heard 450 to 500. It basically takes care of that salary increases that the mayor's put in place. So again, I don't trust them. And bad spending that they've done in the past. I've talked about 101 Ash. We know about that. We know about the sports arena deal. There's numerous deals. Those are some of the biggest ones that just show they don't know how to spend our money right.
There's a city's done studies. Estimate is $9 billion worth of infrastructure work that needs to be done. We saw what happened with our storm channel system back in January. That money, do you think that number is wrong? And if not, how are you going to get to that number to make these repairs? Because we drive on the roads. We've seen the flooding. We've seen the other disrepair in the city. Yeah, no, we've got to increase revenue. And the way we're going to do it isn't by off the backs of the workers, by failed policies by this mayor. And back to the tax part of it. Those that are the poorest among us are the ones that really pay the biggest tax on this. I mean, for you and I, we could just drive out of the town if we wanted to go buy a large end item. So it's disingenuous for the mayor to talk about it's just 4 cents on a cup of coffee. Well, most San Diegans don't buy a cup of coffee for $4 anymore. They're making it at home and putting it in a thermos because the economy is so bad right now. So those people are the ones that, when they buy the refrigerator, it's not just a cup of coffee. It's a refrigerator, it's a TV, it's other items. They're paying that. We can go somewhere else where the sales tax is less. So it's on the backs of the poorest among us. All the experts will tell you it hurts the poorest amongst us. So, I know we need that money. I'm looking at some of the special revenue funds that we have set aside. We've got about $1 billion there that can get us started in this process. But I would just tell you this, the basic things that a mayor is supposed to do
is keeping us safe, right? Taking care of homelessness and infrastructure. On the safety side and the homelessness side, when we do that, we're going to get a lot more business coming back to San Diego. There are so many people, businesses fleeing. There's people not bringing conventions here, businesses that would like to come to San Diego and they're going elsewhere. If we have clean streets that don't smell and don't have people lighting up narcotics with no enforcement action being taken on them, people dying on our sidewalks, maybe we would have the convention center full. Maybe we would have a lot of those vacant businesses open. And when we do that, it does put a lot more green in everybody's pocket. Everybody's starting to spend here in San Diego. And then just having the simple 1 cent tax that we do now for city. I mean, this extra cent is doubling. They'll always just say it's 1 cent. It's literally doubling the city's take on the sales tax. We can do it by just bringing more revenue into San Diego and making it a more desirable place. Fill in those hotels like I talked about earlier.
Sounds like you feel like the money's there.
Yeah.
We just got to manage it better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can tell you time after time that I have seen wasteful, fraudulent spending, just from my perspective as a city employee. I saw a $24 million contract to a homeless service provider for giving out water bottles. The mayor gave them a contract for them to provide services to the homeless. But nobody ever agreed upon what that definition of providing services was. And that just goes to, a person who hasn't had a real job, who hasn't worked in the business world, where it's not about having a metric of success. So there was no definition of success. He probably believed that they were going to be bringing them in for chemical addiction and mental health and offering them job training. Great. That wasn't identified as a definition with this organization. So giving out a toothbrush, giving out dental floss, that was them accepting a service, quote unquote. And they billed the city for quite a bit of money before he found out.
You've kind of segued into what our next topic will be, our third topic for tonight, which is homelessness. And the way I'd like to start this is just by asking you what you think. What is the driving cause of homelessness in San Diego? We've seen it grow a lot over the past decade. Yeah, mental health and chemical addiction. And the numbers that are coming from out of San Diego. There's just a big misunderstanding that the mayor has on this, and it's just because he's not on the street. He might be relying on some experts who don't really get out and do the things that I do and that my friends do, my advisors. When you get out on the street and you actually see it from the tent level, it's a different story. They have a total misdiagnosis of the problem. It is about 85% of the people on the street right now. It's a chemical addiction or most of the time it's both, mental health issue. There's a small group in the beginning of it that's maybe like 5 or 8%, and I call that the have-nots. It's mostly a money issue with them. They're the ones that the mayor likes to talk about the most, that we just need to get them a key to an apartment, get them on their way. It's a very small group, and most of them are off the street fast because they don't want to be on the street. They just came out because of some financial issues. They might have had a little bit of a chemical or mental health issue, but that wasn't really the driving force. It was mostly job or divorce or other things, medical bills. Those guys are easy to help, and we get them off the street fast. That big group in the middle, 85%, they're not going to take you up on that offer. There has to be compelling reasons for them to take you up on the offer, and I think I've got a plan that's going to do that. They are the ones that they can't make that decision on their own. It's either that chemical, the chemical it's in, whether it's alcohol or narcotics, that's not allowing them to think clearly, or it's that mental health problem that they're dealing with that they don't take the meds for, that again, it's not allowing them to make the right choice, and we have to make it for them. I'm tired of seeing people die on the sidewalk. I have been the one that's done the first aid on them numerous times, and I'm done seeing people die on our streets. That's what I think compassion is. Compassion is not allow them to do what they want and leave them alone. Compassion requires action, and I'm an action person on this. And I can have dialogue with people who disagree with me on this, but I'm not going to let them stay on our streets and die anymore. That small group at the end, I call them the will-nots. So the will-nots is that hardcore criminal element that hides amongst them, and they are easily hiding amongst them. These are the sexual assault predators. They've got the guns. They're dealing the fentanyl. They're human trafficking. They're out there hiding in those tents right now, and they're being allowed to do that. So once we sort of bring those people, the large number, again, this isn't solving homelessness, but this is bringing the crisis level down to a manageable level that the Father Joes and the Alphas and all those other great organizations can handle. We get rid of that. That will not allow them to be hiding amongst those people that they take advantage of, and we can get them in jail where they belong, or they're going to flee our city and go to some other city. So that is going to reduce crime as well. You mentioned this big chunk that has mental health issues and or addictions. So what do you do? How do you get them off the street? Where do you get them to? A lot of that's taking advantage of some of the getting them under a conservatorship because they can't make the decision themselves. And we have laws that
most of us are familiar with. If you're under the influence of alcohol, you can't give consent. Somebody who takes advantage of you when you're under the influence, regardless of what was said, that person goes to jail because they were not able to take advantage of it because you were not able to give consent whenever you're under the influence. Same thing with mental health. I mean, unfortunately, I've had a grandfather that had to make that tough decision and have him go to a place when the dementia got so bad that we couldn't take care of him anymore. He didn't want to go. But it's not up to him at that point. We understand the doctor and us who love him realize he needs to go somewhere, even if it's against his will. That's the same with the people out there. I find it very troubling that the mayor's policy is to have a police officer go out there and continually ask these people, will you please come to a shelter with me? And I have to get their permission to take them. We've already established legally in a number of these situations that they do not have the capacity to give me they can't give me consent. They don't have the right things going on upstairs to allow them to make that right decision for them. We have to do that for them. And like I said, that is the majority of the people out there. I'm friends with many of these people. Whenever they are, they're not going through withdrawals, and they're lucid and they're able to talk to me about some of the issues they have going on. They just really fear that time when they're going to leave the street, leave their belongings, and have to go through those withdrawals at a facility. Most of those facilities, it's just a bed. There are not those wraparound services that help them with their chemical addiction issues. If we added just some of these little things to some of the shelter systems that he has now, but better in the ones that I want to do, it's going to make that a much easier decision on their part to take us up on that offer. I've got a homeless family. They've been couch surfing. They've had addiction issues. They've been on the street. They've had to resort to crime, sadly, to survive. I want San Diego to have a program that I would want my family to be here that would take advantage of. I mean, really good quality beds, not a pup tent with no floor on the bottom and a hole in the top, because somebody in the mayor's office thought buying an ice fishing tent was the smart thing. They didn't realize what an ice fishing tent was. A real bed for them. We can afford that. I know we were talking about the budget earlier and how much trouble we're in. These are things that we're already spending far too much money on homelessness and doubling the problem. We can do this for far less. In a partnership that I have with the philanthropic community, large spenders that want to see a San Diego as an example that other cities can emulate. They're excited to do that. They want us to be that example of the West Coast, the one large city that is really succeeding in this, and so all the rest of the country can kind of follow our example.
We're almost out of time. I'm just going to do this quick follow-up. So where do we get the beds?
Yeah.
Where do we get the personnel to treat them? Because California has a shortage of both of those things.
A lot of this is poaching from other cities. It really is. That might not sound nice, but I'm the mayor of San Diego. I'm going to be taking care of San Diego. If we need to pay more, we will draw them down. I've already talked to some of our psychiatric emergency response team members that used to work for the city and now they're in private practice about the folks in the other cities up in the Bay Area, the low morale, the low pay. We will draw them down. If it takes higher pay, they're going to have higher morale. I can tell you that most of the city departments are going to have much higher morale whenever I'm the mayor. But that will draw them down. We'll have those numbers. It is going to cost us more to build that. But the money we spend on the mental health side is savings we can do on the law enforcement side. As a law enforcement officer myself, the number of mental health calls that we go to is just astounding. You'd have no idea that really those are more of the mental health professionals, social workers need to be going those. Sometimes they do need to have police officers with them for protection because they turn violent occasionally. But that would free up the police officers to go do other things. So when we're talking about the amount of money the police department needs to continually increase the number of officers to handle the amount of crime they go to, well, a lot of those calls can be the mental health and the social workers, as well as non-sworn officers, the police investigative service officers. It's another rank within the police department that doesn't pay as much and doesn't require as much training or as long of an academy, and that can free up the police as well. So we can actually save money by spending that money there to free up the police to actually do law enforcement.
All right, Larry Turner, those are three big topics we hit on: housing costs, infrastructure, the homelessness situation, but we also touched on others through that. So we hit quite a bit. So last thing I'd like to ask you is just, if I'm asking you, why do you deserve to be the mayor of San Diego next, and why are you the best man for it?
Yeah, I never wanted this job. I'm gonna be honest. I still say I'm not a politician. I know I am kind of because I'm running for this office. I hate that word. I've worked with a lot of politicians at the federal level and around the world, and only few I've really had a lot of respect for. I think a lot of them get into the business and they treat it like a business and they become tainted. They become corrupt. There's a lot of malfeasance and incompetence there. But I bring an outsider's approach to this. I'm a person with success. I've done this around the world, leading service members from all different countries in all different types of real-world operations that are much harder than what we have to deal with here in San Diego. I've led huge budgets. I came back here to San Diego never wanting to do that again, honestly. Really wanted to put that on the shelf and just continue to serve at the local level here. There is a leadership vacuum in our city, and somebody needed to step up. I was hopeful somebody else would. I really wish Barbara Bree had won. I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. I think we'd have a well-run city. I think most San Diegans have buyer's remorse right now and wish they had voted for her. But she didn't want to run again. Others didn't that I would have gotten behind. Somebody needed to stand up, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Larry Turner looking to serve again, this time as the mayor of San Diego, running against Todd Gloria, the incumbent. We're down the final stretch. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for answering some of these questions for our viewers in the city of San Diego. And
pleasure.
We'll see how it turns out and talk to you afterward, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate it. Next 4 years.
Thanks.
All right.